Welcome to Freedom Motivated with Christina Whiteley, the podcast that empowers you to live life on your terms. Are you uninspired, bored, and unhappy with where life has taken you? And yearning for a life filled with purpose and passion? Look no further. We are here to ignite that fire within, to awaken your true potential, and to guide you on a journey towards absolute freedom. Join us as we delve into the minds of incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders from very different backgrounds with incredible stories. Be inspired by their resilience and learn from their challenges they faced along the path to success. These are the brave individuals who fight every day to awaken people to the power of self-responsibility and who inspire them to create a life they are absolutely in love with. Each episode will explore the concept of conscious income creation, building a business or creating a career that aligns with your unique skill set, purpose, values, and belief system. Discover the strategies, tips, and invaluable insights shared by our guests as they guide you towards making a living doing what you love. It's time to break free from the shackles of conformity and embrace the freedom that awaits. Are you ready to take control of your life? Are you ready to step into the life you've always dreamed of? Then welcome to Freedom Motivated, the podcast that will ignite your spirit and unleash your potential. All right. Christina Whiteley here with another episode of Freedom Motivated, and I'm so excited to have my guest today, Dr. Leslie Davis. We connected through the International Association of Top Professionals, which I was welcomed into in January, but this lovely lady has been a part of this organization for a couple of years. And so last year, she was honored with the Top Mental Health Counselor Award. And this year, she was honored with the Top 50 Fearless Leaders and the Empowered Woman Award, which is a massive accomplishment. If you have any idea, the company that we keep in this organization, to be honored with that is no small feat. So I'm very excited for this conversation. Dr. Leslie, she focuses on helping people with their relationships. And a lot of the times, I don't know about you, but I've definitely had my fair share of toxic relationships that I had to grow through, that I had to learn how to love myself so that I no longer put myself in that situation over and over and over again. She helps a lot of single moms and teenagers. I just said to her behind the scenes, I was like, where were you in my teenage years? I could have used you. So without further ado, Dr. Leslie, I would love for you to give people a little bit of a background about who you are, how you got into this field, and then we're just going to have a conversation around mental health and you know what we can do to put ourselves in a position to win and be happy on a daily basis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Leslie Davis, and Christina, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation because I love talking about everything related to relationships, the good and the bad. So I have had my fair share of being in toxic relationships from the teen years into adulthood. And I am really happy to say I'm in a very healthy relationship now. Took a long time to get there, but I made it. So just a little bit about me. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor, and I'm licensed in 2 states in the US, both Illinois and Missouri. And the reason for that is I'm right on the border of St. Louis. So, you know, it's about 20 minutes from my office to downtown St. Louis. So it's so close that people want to either cross the river to come see me, but I figure why not just get licensed in both states? So that's been very helpful.
No
I
kidding.
also
Great business move, by the way.
And there's something going on currently in the counseling world. It's like a compact that they're wanting to have people, I guess, give us the ability to work with people outside of the states where we're primarily licensed, but not all states have passed that just yet. So once that opens up, you know, it'll be really helpful for me to work with the clients that I serve that like to travel, where they can't take me with them. So that way I'll be able to work with them in other states too.
I think that's
Yeah.
fabulous. And so how long have you been doing this for? How long have you been in the profession for?
Well, that's an interesting question. So I started out working in child welfare in Illinois, where I was working with foster children, their families. And so I got my master's very early in my career, probably about 2 years after getting my bachelor's. And at that time, I didn't really need to get my license for counseling, but I was using therapeutic skills. So I had my master's in professional counseling in 2007. And probably 10 years later, I got my license. And the reason for that is the agency that I was working for just abruptly closed, gave us a 30-day notice that they were shutting down. And that had been my life. I loved working in child welfare. And I was really disappointed that I wasn't able to continue that journey. But I think God had better plans and bigger plans than I could ever imagine. So I had to make a pivot, and I went to work in an agency called Chestnut Health Systems, where it was community mental health. And I actually loved that position because I got to work with teens who were part of the court system. So I was working in a program called Mental Health Juvenile Justice. And I figured at that time, why not get licensed if I'm actually labeled as a therapist now? So I went back and basically taught myself or retaught myself my master's program, took the exam, and I went on from there.
What an incredible background to be able to have that kind of experience to bring forth and education to bring forth into what you do now. I think that often we go through the challenging things, or I always say with every blessing is a curse and every curse is a blessing, because sometimes these things come at us and we least expect them, right? We lose a job, or we lose somebody really important in our lives, or things just pivot in a way that we never saw coming. But often those are some of the biggest blessings that we have in our lives if we can learn to embrace and figure out what those lessons were placed in front of us for. And so it sounds like you've really made an incredible move based on some of the things that maybe could have stopped you in your tracks. And I would like to talk a little bit about mental health, because it was really interesting to me that we just had a meeting with IAOTP, and the common ground for almost all of us was mental health, of what everybody's going through, what we've experienced for the last 4 years. And so how have you seen or what are you seeing in most of your cases or in society today that you've been able to help people overcome, just by giving a little bit of perspective? Because I think sometimes we get stuck in our thoughts and think all of this stuff is happening to us instead of happening for us, and not allowing us to grow through it. And really it comes down to self-responsibility and what we're willing to do to change things. So what do you see kind of going on in the world right now in the mental health space that we want to bring awareness to, so that people can shift and start to take control of their lives as opposed to feeling a victim of them?
Yeah, I tell all of the clients that I work with that everything we go through, it's not even about us. It's about us being able to help someone in the future. And you just never know when the opportunity is going to come your way. So this is just practice for you being able to step in and empower someone else. But I would say since the pandemic, what was that, 2020? Feels like it was so
Yeah.
long ago. I think the stigma of mental health has reduced significantly since the pandemic, and specifically working with people of color who come see me. They're seeking a Black therapist, and that is not something that I wanted to be known for, as being a Black therapist. But the clients that find me, they are Googling Black therapists in my area, and I'm one of the first that
Wow.
pops up, and that's how they find me. Um, so specifically in I would say the Black community, that stigma has reduced. And there's so much history involved with how Black people have been mistreated, not just in physical health spaces, but mental health as well.
Yes.
And that history there it's very deep. And so to know that Black people are now seeking therapy, and they're not afraid to do that, and they're not afraid to talk about it, I think it's such a beautiful thing.
It
Some of the
absolutely
teens I
is.
work with specifically, this is so interesting. So I work with teenagers mostly that are either transitioning from like middle school to high school, so like 8th grade to 9th grade, or they're transitioning from high school into college. And those youth are so on time with learning about their emotions and how to express themselves. And they're looking at their family members, recognizing my mom needs therapy or my dad needs therapy. And they're not afraid to say that. Or they're talking about emotional responsibility, really. And they're
Yeah.
taking ownership of how they feel, but they're also able to recognize how other people are feeling or how they might be feeling. And so they're having conversations within their own families of what is going well with them in therapy and how that's affecting their friendships, how it's affecting even romantic relationships. But they're not afraid to say, like, my therapist said, you know.
Right.
So
Right.
I really want to put that on a t-shirt. My therapist said. And
You
wear it
should.
proudly.
You should brand it, because the thing is there are generational curses that have happened, or generational traumas that have been passed down. And often, like, until we have somebody else's perspective, or somebody else that can show us a different perspective, we think it's normal. We think
Yeah.
all of these things are normal that have been passed down from generation to generation, but the world has changed so much. And it's funny because regardless of whatever color you are, I'm Italian. And so with my background, it's like be seen and not heard. We don't talk about our private stuff. We keep that bottled up inside. If quit your crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. That's kind of the mentality of our parents, right? But you realize as you come into adulthood, I'm 40 now, you realize that you had to work through all of these little things in your life so that you didn't repeat the same thing for your kids. And I really believe that there's a different awareness now. Like you were talking about, there's no stigma attached to mental health right now, because we've all been through this together over the last 4 years. We've all had to experience some type of anxiety, stress, depression, loss, something. And that kind of ties us together, but it also makes us become hyper aware of where we sit in the world and our self responsibility. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Is that piece of self responsibility. And I love that, like, the kids that you're talking to now are bringing this to attention to their parents. I remember the first couple of times that I went to counseling, and I am a huge advocate of counseling. I have my counselor on speed dial. Like, I think everybody that is a high performer, everybody in business needs somebody to talk to other than dumping on their spouse, right? They need somebody in their corner. And often, finding somebody that you can trust and have a conversation with. I know there are many times that my counselor has spun the mirror around and put it facing me. And when I realized that I'm doing this to myself, and we can laugh about it or have a lighthearted conversation, as opposed to feeling bad or guilty or shameful about these things. It's just life experience that we go through. And so do you agree that that's part of this process of breaking these stigmas and this generational trauma that's been passed down, is that we now become self-aware and we're able to help those around us?
Absolutely. I love how you use the phrase of using, a mirror, spinning the mirror around. That's something I actually tell my clients my first session with them, is that I see myself as their therapist as their mirror. So whatever they give me, I just reflect it back to them. And so if they're not giving me all the information I need to reflect back so they can see themselves better, they're going to miss parts of themselves that they need to see so they can heal. So I love that.
Yeah, and we can't keep burying them, right? Like, so many people, I see this massive potential in them, but instead of doing the hard work, and the hard work is the work that you do on yourself, make no mistake on that, right? It's the hard work, is the realizations and the growth and the working through the trauma so that you're not triggered all the time, and you realize that the stuff that you're reacting to is simply a reflection of everyone else towards you, right? Like, how we behave, our judgments, our behavior, or how we speak to people is simply a reflection of ourselves. And so often we look at it as somebody's trying to attack me, or somebody is not getting along with me, or I just want to keep the peace because we've been brought up in an environment where we need to be people pleasers and make everybody happy, right? But in the same sense, there's this bigger picture here, that if you can look at your life from a balcony viewpoint and look into your life, like with the guidance of somebody else, often we can see it for what it is, and we can heal, like you said, heal and grow through it. So what are some of the things that you see people right now healing through and starting to choose different in today's world than they would have maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, I primarily work with women who struggle in their relationships. And most of the clients I work with have an anxious attachment style. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with attachment styles, but the main three that I like to highlight is just being anxious or avoidant and secure. And there's also the disorganized type. But many of the women that come in, they have a history of intimate partner violence or domestic violence. Maybe they've witnessed it in their childhood, or they've been exposed to verbal abuse or emotional abuse at some point in their lives, either, being witnesses to it, or they personally experienced that. And that carries on in their relationships, and they end up getting stuck in toxic patterns, not just dating the same type of person, but they end up in toxic patterns for themselves, where they just continue to be the same person over and over, just with a different partner. So I help them slow down and see, how did you get here? Let's rewind a little bit. Let's look at what was your life like as a child? What did you see your mother do in her relationships? How did you see your father interact with you? What do you remember about that? And that takes a lot of work. And sometimes, again, being their mirror, they don't want to look at that. And so they'll kind of shy away from some of those tough conversations. But my job as their therapist is to really, I push their buttons a little bit. I make them do the work in their sessions, but the work is really done between therapy sessions, when they're interacting with their friends and their family. But they have to use the therapist, and that therapy session is a safe space to practice how they're going to interact with people outside of that.
Yeah, and that there's a ripple effect that happens, right? When you have conversations and then you realize you're in the same situation you've always been in, but instead of reacting the same way, you get to say, wait, hold, either I'm going to create a boundary or I'm going to do things differently. I'm going to choose to do things differently this time. And I think it's great that you work with single moms and with teenagers and allow them to rewrite that story for themselves, as opposed to it just becoming a habit or something that they do as a pattern because they're unaware of it. And so, we look at maybe our grandparents, and our grandparents stayed together, whether they were happy, mad, or sad, right, for years and years and years. And then there was our parents and their demographic. A lot of people just got divorced. They didn't commit to the growth in their marriage. They didn't commit to the growth in themselves. And they just said it's easier to get divorced. And we made it easy in society, right? And so it took away from this value that we put on marriage. And now I look at people and I see them waiting longer to get married. I see them kind of walking into who they are and really truly becoming who they're meant to be before they find a partner to add to that, right? Before, so that they don't have to coexist or be codependent, I guess is the correct phrase, right?
Yeah.
And so we see this new demographic of millennials that are coming through that are way more aware, that are way more decisive. They know what they want. They're looking for more. They're willing to do the work to heal. And then they're also willing to help their families heal. Like, that's what I'm hearing from you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And there's some danger to that waiting period. I think it's healthy at a
Sure.
point where you're being intentional in that waiting
Yes.
period. You're listening to podcasts, you're reading the books, you're practicing great communication skills. But if you keep waiting to find a partner who's also on your level in the same way, you may not find that, unfortunately. And it may take forever. You just may never get married because you're looking for perfection. So
Right.
to find balance when it comes to working on yourself and trusting that the person that you meet is also doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
giving 110% on both sides. It's not 50-50. It's 110% on both
for
sides and
sure.
committing to that, right? I remember my parents are divorced, my husband's parents are divorced, and we learned a lot from those experiences. And I always remember, my dad drilling it into me that nobody's perfect. You're not going to find the perfect match, but what you want to do is find the person that is close enough, and that if there are negative traits about them that you don't like, those are traits that you can live with for a lifetime, even if they get stronger, because odds are, as you evolve, right, and as you age, there are going to be things that possibly tend to dig in a little bit if you're not both in that growth mindset. But I would love to hear, how you talk to single moms about raising their kids without a partner. How do you help them become significantly strong in a way, because the male and female energy is so different, right? And what they contribute to raising our kids and as role models. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how you do that in this space of, like, we have to put our mental health first, right? But then we also have to give everything to our kids, and then we have to definitely be able to be financially free because we have to take care of our kids, and there's all this pressure on you. So how do you help women navigate that?
Yeah, I definitely use my personal journey because I'm also a single mom. My son is about to be 20. I can't believe I'm saying that. But I've been a single mom his entire life. So I know the ins and outs. And it's an interesting journey for me because I was raised as an only child and there was not a male in my house. My mother was also a single mom. So I had never been around a male from beginning until, through the teenage years and adulthood. And so having that experience of being a single mom to a son is very special, very interesting. I'm learning so much about guys in general, just watching him. So I'm
Totally.
grateful for that experience. But I think it's important that single moms recognize who they can turn to for support and emotional support, not just the physical support. because it's hard being a single mom. It can be really lonely, especially when you have friends who are married who have children, or your friends don't live near you. And sometimes there's a stigma of being a single mom where even the family members don't support that single mom. So she gets isolated. She might turn to a toxic partner because that's the only person giving her attention. So I think the important piece of having healthy relationships as a single mom is knowing that you have at least one person that you can rely on emotionally, whether it's a best friend or a coworker, or if you're joining some type of group. So for me, like I train jujitsu. So my jujitsu community is like a big family to me. I'm part of a large church where, the members of my church are also part of my support system, and I can rely on them emotionally if I need that. And so I think having the time for yourself to connect with other adults or other single moms is so important. That's one thing. I started a nonprofit called Hearts and Faith with that intention, because other single moms need to connect with each other. It's just a different journey. Like even a married mother whose husband is away or who's never really home, that experience is very different from a single mom who's really truly doing it all on her own, who may not get child support, who may not have friends and family close by. It's just a different journey. And so other single moms need to know that they're not alone. That's the biggest piece, that they're not alone.
I
Through
think
my
we all need to have that in our lives, right? To have a
Absolutely.
community of people that support us.
Yeah. And that was actually part of my dissertation work, is creating a resource that was free for single moms to help them learn how to have healthy connections. So my podcast, if y'all tune in, is She Matters with Dr. Leslie Davis. It's something I created with single moms in mind, specifically Black single moms, to help them not just navigate healthy relationships, but the true intention behind it is to prevent them from having symptoms of depression or suicidal ideation. And so it's a free resource, not just for the single mom, but for people who love her that need to know a little bit about her experience.
And I think that, when, like a lot of the times when I talk to business owners, we talk about certain demographics and niches that we can serve. And we were just talking about this before we came live, that the challenges that we overcome in our lives, whether it's when we're kids, teenagers, whether it's something we go through in adulthood, those challenges are there to help us grow through them so that we're able to help other people. And so I love that you have created a practice where single moms and Black women reach out to you, knowing that you'll understand, right?
Mhm.
Knowing that you'll see their perspective. And it's so interesting to me because I grew up in a really small town. There were very few multicultural families there where I grew up, and that's no fault of mine, but it was just how I was raised. And when all of these different movements started coming out with like Me Too and Black Lives Matter, and then Asians Lives Matter, and then now it's Trans Lives Matter, and all of these things started coming out, I realized that people just wanted a voice. They just wanted a voice and they wanted to be heard. And it wasn't a matter of you versus me or how we're different. It was a matter of we need to find a way that we can be relatable and we can have community and support. And I think that, moving forward into the future, having people come together and collaborate in a way that doesn't show our differences, but more so brings us together as a community of one. We've seen so much division over the last couple of years. We've seen so many people fall apart from families because of different decisions that they made. And when I look at the big picture, we're all humans living on this planet together. We're all trying to get through it one day at a time. And really what it comes down to it is self-responsibility and kindness, just being kind and not realizing like what you've gone through in your life is usually behind closed doors. People don't know the story that you have until you have the courage to tell it. And so I really appreciate, that you focused on teenagers because of your upbringing and because of single moms and being able to help them move through those things so that maybe they can see themselves in a different light, because it's really difficult sometimes to not have the support, right? If you don't have somebody to talk to, and you don't, like, it can be really, really lonely. And I think, we look at our demographic of teenagers now, and they're stressed, depressed, and anxious, whereas like those words were never words that came out of our mouth when we were in high school, because we didn't even, we weren't aware of that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And there has been a rise of suicide among youth, specifically Black youth, in the past couple of years, maybe since the pandemic. And I don't know exactly why that is, but I do know that, typically people who are driven to commit the act of suicide by ending their life, um, through several trainings that I've attended and just having, conversations with people who have been on the verge of committing suicide, a lot of them share that they don't feel connected to the people that are in their lives. So there might be someone who has tons of friends, or they feel like they're important in their jobs, but they don't have any connection. They feel like no one gets them. They might be surrounded by so many people, but there's lack of connection there. And that's what drives them to the point of saying, this is it, I can't do anymore. And so there's an interpersonal theory of suicide that talks about that lack of connection, is what is the basis of suicidal thoughts. And so that's why I wanted to create these communities of support for single moms, for youth, for the people that are in my life, the people that I serve and my clients, to know that they need connection. And so I will drive them in that direction. But a lot of times it's hard to find connection if you don't know how to have healthy relationships. And
Correct.
most of the time, most people have really never seen a healthy relationship. We might see something on TV, but that's not real life, and you don't see it often.
Yeah.
And it's hard to even identify what is a healthy relationship if I've never really experienced it. I've never seen it in my family. I don't have any friends that are in healthy relationships. So how do I have that for myself? And that takes some work.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you see a different perspective, but I think social media and technology and how we are living online, literally like with our phones in front of our faces when we're at the dinner table, when we're out with friends, like I think that that's really, really damaged our connection, our human connection with people. And that's why people are feeling so lonely right now. Do you see other aspects of technology or other things in society that are contributing to that as well?
Oh my goodness. I just watched a documentary about the loneliness epidemic. And there was part of the video showed, I can't remember the lady's name, but she created like this AI generated app and it's mostly for guys that are wanting a relationship, but they don't know how to connect with someone. And they will pay $1 per minute just to have conversation that's AI generated. It's not even really her. And
This is scary for me.
it is very scary. And just shows that, people want to connect with someone. They just don't know how to do it. And I think
Yeah.
over the years, the last, 10, 20 years, we've just lost the capability of doing that because, social media is in our face, the phones are in our face. If you look around, just walking outside, everyone has their phone all the time. They're either listening to music, they're even at a stoplight, scrolling on Facebook or Instagram. Like we just can't have any downtime. We can't have that time to just have a conversation, even having a cup of coffee with someone, their phone is on the table and we're all
Yeah.
flipping it over, like getting our alerts. And we're just so distracted by that. And I think it's so dangerous, to continue to do that and to even show our youth that that's normal. That shouldn't be normal.
Yeah, and it's noticeable, my friends who have teenagers, my daughter's she'll be 8 in a month. Actually less than a month. I better plan that. But she, the way that I have this like really difficult balance, because I'm like, I know that your life is going to need technology. I know that you're going to grow up in this world full of technology, but I also want you to go outside and play, like we grew up playing in the forest. We grew up playing, like riding our bikes and rollerblading and doing all these things to connect with neighborhood kids. And now kids sit behind a screen instead of doing that. And so my friends that have teenagers, they're like, it is so funny to watch our teenagers because they don't know how to interact with each other. They don't know how to date. They don't know how to have these conversations. They don't know how to build relationships with people because that art has been lost. And just like you said, like this whole AI generated conversation, I'm just like, oh my God, it like reminds me of like the phone call chats that people would call. Like, remember like the phone numbers that people would call and like have sexy chats online that
Yeah.
way, like way back in the day. And now that's AI generated. Like, we as humans were not meant to live this way. We were meant to connect. We were meant to have community. And if we're not conscious of those things, it's going to be really hard on our mental health moving forward in a world that we're simply talking to people through screens that may or not be real, right?
That's so scary. Like, I talk to my son all the time. Like, you might have these friends, and this is normal for his generation to create friendships online.
Yeah.
You have a YouTube channel, you've got people subscribing to you, or Discord, all these different apps where you can connect with people and have chatting conversations, but you're not really talking to anyone. You don't hear their voice. And nowadays, you can't even trust that the voice you're listening to is a real person anymore. It's scary.
It is scary. And so how do you navigate that with your son? How do you navigate that with kids right now? How do you teach them how to connect in a world that's so disconnected?
One thing I've been talking to my teens about is challenging them not to put on a filter when they're posting online. And there's many reasons for that. One is just so they can accept who they really are, but there's also a safety feature to that. So if we're always posting online and there's a filter attached to our picture or video, if there is something terribly wrong that happens to us or to that person and we're looking for them in real life, we don't really know what they look like. So we can never find them, you know? So it's just not safe anymore. And you're not genuine when you're putting on a filter, not just with your pictures, but also who you're portraying yourself to be online, like having that perfect photo or having the perfect lipstick and outfit on for the day. Um, it's just too much work too. Like,
Yeah, it
it
really
seems like it's
is.
exhausting.
It
So that's
is.
one thing, just challenging them to be themselves, be genuine, but also to look for people in their lives that they feel most disconnected to or from, and challenging them to initiate conversation, not just always waiting for someone to come and talk to them. Because most of the time, again, like, we're so caught up in social media and all these things we have to do, we're not initiating conversation. Think about adult friendships. How long does it
Yeah.
take for you to get together with your girlfriends? Because life is just busy, it's chaotic, right? So you have to sometimes be that person like, hey, we're gonna meet this week. What day are you available? Like, just initiate conversation, initiate connection.
Yeah, and not just think that it's going to happen for you. I think that self-responsibility piece, right, of creating your community and creating the people that you spend time with and being, really conscious of spending time with people that make you feel good versus people that don't. And I really like how you talk about looking for conversations that are not necessarily in alignment with your own, like seeking conversations that are different than yours. I think we're in a world that there's all this different types of censorship, and whether you're censoring what you're saying online or what you're posting, whether you're censoring what you're saying in a group of people or with your spouse, and then there's always the private thoughts that we have in our head that we're censoring all the time and saying we can't say that out loud, right? But I think that when we take the time to have conversations that may be difficult, time that like that we can grow and learn from other people's perspective, we don't have to agree with them, but we don't have to hate them either, right? Like, we can still respectfully disagree with somebody and possibly learn something in the process. Like, I love that you're teaching teenagers how to do that, that it's not necessarily this herd mentality, but like, how can we bring people together and have really remarkable conversations? How can we bring people together and connect the dots and have some, critical thinking together and come up with a solution that doesn't have to be my idea or your idea, but just the best idea collectively? And if we can raise the next generation of kids that way, with this awareness or this self-awareness of community, as opposed to individualism and having all of these divisions that are happening in the moment, I think that's a lot more positive for the future generations that are coming, and allowing them to learn proper communication so that they can have conversations without arguing or without segregating or anything like that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have noticed with some of the youth I work with that they are not afraid to say what they need to say. Um, and
Good.
I wish the adults would take up on that. I like to call it the Romeo and Julia effect, where they remained in silence. They had something they need to say to each other, but they just didn't do it, and they ended up
Yeah.
dead, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we need to be a little bolder in our approaches with talking about things that are hurting us or telling someone that we're offended, because we need to heal in those moments of having conversation. If we don't have the conversation, we have all these negative thoughts that we're, internalizing and, thinking that someone is thinking something negative about us or that they did something for the wrong reasons. And we won't ever know the truth if we never have a conversation.
Yeah, and we don't provide a safe space to have those conversations in a world that is, more and more on social media, where there are people behind the scenes that have zero consequence for the things that they're saying.
Hmm.
Many people are scared to put themselves out there because of the judgment or the ridicule or, the negative feedback, which quite frankly, you have to grow to a place that you love yourself so much that you can ignore those things and not be affected by them, but also have at the same time have the compassion to have those difficult conversations
Yeah.
and learn from them, right? Because sometimes when things sting a bit, it's because you've got a lesson to learn there, right?
Hmm. I just recently had a very tough conversation with someone that I felt was very close to me. And the reason why I chose to have that conversation is because I didn't want to damage our friendship. And
Mhm.
if I would have held on to some negative feelings and negative thoughts about why they did what they did, our friendship probably would have ended. And that would have been more hurtful and damaging in the long run than just having that tough conversation for 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and you also have to realize that in those spaces, you might have those conversations that are difficult with a friend. And if you're both not healed and coming from a healed place, you might end up losing that friendship in the first place. But at least you put yourself out there in a way that you showed love and kindness and caring towards that person and gave them a chance, as opposed to, I know a lot of people run away from difficult conversations. They don't want to have, for many years, I did that because I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable or I didn't want to hurt them in a way. I didn't have the proper communication skills to have those conversations. But in the same sense, like, what are you willing to risk to put yourself and your mental health in a positive environment, right?
That's good.
So what I would love, Leslie, Dr. Leslie, is if you could tell people where they could find you if they would like to connect with you. And again, you're in Illinois and
Missouri.
Missouri. Okay. And so where can people find you online? Where can they connect with you?
Yes, I am on Instagram and LinkedIn. It should be under Dr. Leslie Davis. So DrLesliedAvis. And I can be reached by email as well at leslie.d.lcpc@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for taking the time today to have this conversation. I am so proud of you for your accomplishments and for making a mark in this world, a positive impact, and for helping, single moms and teenagers thrive in an environment that was really challenging for you when you were growing up. I think that this is such a beautiful thing to be able to pay it forward this way. So thank you guys for listening in on another episode of Freedom Motivated. My name is Christina Whiteley, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Freedom Motivated with your host, me, Christina Whiteley. We hope that the stories we've shared today have sparked a fire within you and ignited your passion for living life on your terms. Remember, true freedom lies in the choices we make and the actions we take. So go out there and embrace your journey. Take the leap of faith, believe in yourself, and never settle for less than what you deserve. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Freedom Motivated podcast and never miss out on our upcoming interviews with more incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders. Be bold, be brave, be disruptive. You are capable of things far beyond your wildest dreams if you just have the courage to go for it. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Until next time, may you always be driven by the desire for freedom and motivated to make your dreams a reality.